Good. Kaiju number 8 looks good, all things considered. Being the new major battle shonen adaptation, Kaiju 8 has some big shoes to fill, and based on the first 3 episodes, I think it will be fine. Produced at productionig and directed by industry veteran Shigeyuki Miya and Tomomi Kamiya, the show looks good. I feel like I should choose my words carefully this time around, more so than usual, as there's a lot of misinformed takes floating around about this show. Anyway, let's get to it. Of course, we'll go through the episodes, but let's talk about a few general aspects first. One of the most impressive things about this project is the art direction. The department is led by veteran art director Shinji Kimura, one of the best in the industry, and the backgrounds look amazing. You might be familiar with Kimura's work from Blood Blockade Battlefront and Dorohedoro. Among other things, Kimura is excellent at incorporating a lot of stuff into a single background. They look busy, but it works. The detail doesn't feel excessive. Of course, the kaijus are 2D, and that doesn't surprise me. I know many of you thought they'd be 3D, but that wasn't going to happen. These kaijus have unique designs, and most of them show up once or twice. Creating an entire high-quality model from scratch for a one-off appearance isn't a sensible thing to do. And finally, we have the character designs drawn by Tetsuya Nishio, an industry legend. Now, I have said this before, I'm not the biggest fan of the designs, but that does not mean the designs are bad. It's pure personal preference, and I don't dislike them either. In fact, I quite like a few. Her, for example. It's mainly Kafka's design that bothers me. His facial anatomy looks a bit too goofy. I know he's fairly unserious as a character, but still. The designs have a low line count which allows for a large degree of movement, and the design reinforcement has been solid so far, so it's not a big deal. And with that, we can talk about the episodes. The first one of which was the most impressive. Right off the bat, we get this insane shot. It's not 3D, but the sense of volume is top-notch due to the background layering / compositing. The rows of buildings are arranged into several layers. This shot has over 10 of those, and each of these layers shift from left to right at a different speed, depending on how close they are to the camera. The closest layer moves the fastest. This makes the shot feel three-dimensional. Also, the subtle reflection and the not-so-subtle glow on these glass buildings are compositing tricks. Such a well-composed shot. Up next, we have some amazing 2D crowd animation, which is always impressive. This is not unfinished animation. It's just them having fun drawing characters that don't even have design sheets. The crowd is drawn by Osamu Tanabe, which is interesting. He had retired as far as I know. Again, these are background characters. Who cares if one of them looks like Jabba the Hutt on a diet plan? It's fun to look at, and it's animated. People are moving, no CGI either. Another well-executed shot here. I'm fairly sure all of it is 2D. Just like that other shot, the background is arranged into layers, and each of these layers move differently. The kaiju shows up next, and as I said, it's 2D. They did add this texture on top of it, which looks fine. They made the kaiju's appearance feel chaotic. Every movement it made was accompanied by massive amounts of effects and debris, most of which was 2D, although a fair bit of digital smoke was present. I love the way you can see the windows shake when the kaiju moves. It's a simple glow added by the compositing team on top of a background illustration, but it adds so much to the scene. These shots are great. The helicopter and the background is 3D, and the camera work is really clever, although the lines on the 2D kaiju do shift a lot because of it. The buildings here are PNGs being dragged across the screen, but they don't look awkward, partially due to the effects animation. Really good looking action here. The entire background is 3D, and the fast moving camera adds to the scale and makes the scene feel really dynamic. By this point, the screen looks dirty in a good way. The kaiju has stirred up a lot of dirt and smoke, which is why the scene looks dark and grey. Also, most people won't notice this, but look how this Yokohama banner bends when the thing falls on it. Great attention to detail. The sense of scale and enormity was extremely well established throughout the sequence, which is great as it's an important aspect of a show that revolves around kaijus. Really love this shot. The texture work is extremely pronounced. The compositing team is responsible for the scales, some of the blood and most of the eye detail. And that was was the big opening fight, and it looked great, but the episode wasn't done flexing its animation muscles. Love these shots. The subtle character acting is great. Every single character here moves in a different way, meaning all of them had to be animated. They moved even when they were far away from the camera. Tetsuya Nishio's corrections were really heavy throughout this scene. There's so much movement present throughout. The people in the crowd, the large number of hands, and these guys, all of them were animated. Nothing was stationary. I won't go through every cut, but know that this episode had a lot of lively character acting with expressive and exaggerated facial expressions. I'm not a fan of the diffused compositing here. It looks too washed out and drab. Intentional or not, I think it looks unappealing. The backgrounds were great throughout this episode, but they really stood out here. The warm orange tone made the backgrounds look surreal. They added a bunch of digital lens flares which only added to that look. This was a beautiful scene. Nice rotation here, not much to break down, it just looks cool. The kaiju design was nice and well enforced, but the most impressive thing about this scene was its dynamic nature. They did an excellent job at making these 3D backgrounds resemble Kimura's art direction. This was such a cool idea. The glass is 3D, the character isn't, and both the 2D and 3D components work together really well. Again, movement everywhere. Stuff was never static. We got some wildly expressive character acting, very Nishio-like, that's all I'll say. The line art changed here, becoming thicker and less uniform, which got the intensity across. This cut was so good. The extremely consistent lines and the large amount of detail looked fantastic. This sequence was excellent. Of course, the comp was heavy-handed, but the drawings themselves were heavily distorted as well, with wobbly lines and strong smears. This made the scene look trippy, which was the intention. The episode ends with some strong Nishio corrections, which coupled with the backgrounds looked amazing. Episode 2 was significantly more laid back, which is to be expected. It did look good, but we didn't get all that many standout scenes besides some fun morphing animation and great backgrounds. The action here was decent, but not too over the top. Yes, the drawings were consistent and the animation was weight-filled, but the boards were quite basic, with long holds consisting of looped effects. Not much else to cover really, at least not stuff I haven't already mentioned. We did get some more of that expressive character acting, but that's about it. Episode 3 was, to put it nicely, quite underwhelming. It confirmed an old suspicion of mine, that being the fact that this show is quite conservative animation-wise. It's not one of those sakuga everywhere shows, and the last 2 episodes are proof of that, this one especially. The action was alright, the scenes looked normal, and a few of the drawings looked less like a minimal line work stylistic approach and more like weak drawings. Same with a few cuts. There wasn't anything explicitly wrong with this episode, but nothing really stood out either. At least the kaijus were still 2D. Kaiju 8 is a good looking show with a strong aesthetic. While the last 2 episodes haven't been the most bombastic displays of sakuga, we know the team will snap once something major happens. At least I think they will. Oh, and I forgot to mention, an in-between frame is not indicative of a designer's ability or a show's quality. In other news, grass is green and cows can't fly. That's about it. Liked the video? Check out this other bit of content on screen. Like and subscribe, and until next time.